Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me just say that we get it. Personal development can be hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Project Endure has been on a mission to create a supportive and inspiring community of people, all striving to be better together. Head down to the link in the show notes and join the Hard Things Club so that we can do hard things together. And if you're already a member, invite a friend and spread the love. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. Whoa, that's the first time I've ever messed that up. I wonder if I leave that in there. All right, maybe. We're going to start this over. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 169. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the great state of New Jersey, we have a very, very special guest, Matt Zelaya. Matt, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. I'm excited to be here, excited to chop it up with you and, just see where it goes. I'm excited to kind of get this going. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me as well. And I appreciate your patience. We rescheduled last minute, came down with what I believe was COVID. And I was telling people all last week, I don't get sick often. I'm usually once a year, maybe once every other year kind of guy. But when I get sick, I'm a huge baby. And so I was a baby last week, but I'm feeling better. And now we're here. So with that being said, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience, to the listeners. And I want you to introduce yourself as if somebody listening has zero clue who Matt Zelaya is.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to preface before I kind of get into this. There's a lot of different ways I could take this. I'm going to try to sum it up into just a quick elevator pitch, but also give everything to know about me. So obviously, like you said, I live in New Jersey, 25 years old, played football majority of my life, played into college football, played at one of the best Division II schools in the country, and then had to stop that short just because head was all out of whack, experienced a lot of head injuries along the way. And then that kind of segued into what I do now, which is a lot of running, training for some big races, pretty active on social media, working with some brands. I do some online coaching. I coach at a group fitness gym called Alpha Fit Club in New Jersey. They're starting to expand outside New Jersey. And then I also coach at another gym, Total Nunziato Training, which is in New Jersey as well. And then me and my partner, who's actually my sister's boyfriend, we've been partners for about 6 years now. We're working on building up a brand called Sunday Morning Club, which is one of the three hats over here behind me. But so we're working on building that up. We've been in the e-commerce industry for a while now. So I kind of try to juggle a little bit of everything there. And that's kind of a gist of what I do right now, actively training for races all the time. Is a big part of what I do. It takes up a lot of time, but just also managing different parts of my life and everything I do, I enjoy doing. So that's why I continue doing it. Although some people may think I'm being spread thin, I feel like my time is managed properly. And that's kind of a quick gist of who I am and I guess kind of what I do in a way.
Yeah. So first guest on this podcast, episode 2, Sam Tooley. Sam and I recorded a bunch of podcast episodes on our previous podcast before this one. And Sam likes to say a lot of pots on the stove. And it sounds like you have a lot of pots on the stove. One of the things I would love to start with, because we share this in common, is the football background. I played football for the majority of my childhood, teenage years, through high school, into college, and then that got cut short. And I'm wondering for you, when you look back, what are some of the ways where football, the sport, made you a better person? What are some of the lessons that you learned through football?
Everything. I credit everything I do to football. It's funny. I was just talking about this recently, but it's hard to tell just being on screen, but I'm an undersized. I was always the smallest person on the field. 5'7". In high school, I was 150, 53 at most. In college, I was 160-ish. Always the smallest person on the field. So naturally, I had to work a little bit harder and do a little bit more work than everybody else, and just to catch up. And I played at Grandma's Catholic, which at the time we were a top school in the country. My senior year, we were ranked top 10, won a state championship. Um, we played IMG Academy my junior year, so that's another top school in the country. Played on ESPN a few times. Um, so really, just my whole life playing football, I was always on the undersized part of it, and naturally, you don't realize it until you look back on it. But you had to do more work at that time when you're not given the gifts that everybody else has, right? We're all given our own gifts, and I credit everything I do now, my work ethic, everything that I go about my training. On the days where I wake up and I'm like, damn, I really just don't want to. I don't want to do this at all. But it's like it's the work that has to get done. When everybody does the work that's required, everything moves at the same pace. And I realized that early that I can't be doing that because then I won't be starting. I won't be making an impact on this team. I got to be doing more. And then, seeing what everybody else did and just doing more than that. And then it just compounded to get me, that starting spot my junior and senior year, captain of the team, Division II scholarship to play in one of the best D2 schools in the country. And then, yeah, I played a lot my sophomore year. I got to check off really everything in my last season. Well, what I didn't know was my last season, and won a championship there as well. So it was a good way to end. And then I just talk about it so much. You would think I was playing yesterday just because of how much I've learned from the game of football. And I credit just everything in terms of how I interact with people, with even just parents, with kids, coaches, and how I am now coaching too. And what I want to give off to everybody else as well, and sharing my work ethic and mentality around all that. So literally everything. And I'm sure you could probably say the same about yourself as well, playing, into that college career and just, it's it's crazy, but I really do credit everything to football.
Yeah. So I've got two lessons that I'll bring up and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And then I
Mm.
have just a weird statement and I'll leave people with the cliffhanger until we get there. But so the two lessons, one, the ball always gets snapped, right?
Mm.
You have a bad play, you make a mistake, you're not feeling great, whatever it is, right? The ball's going to get snapped and you have to be ready. And I love that when you think of life, right? You have a bad moment, a bad day, a bad week, like the ball's going to get snapped, the sun's going to rise, you get up and you do your best on the next play. So that's one thing that definitely carries with me from day to day, well beyond football. And then the other thing is, I don't know about you, but when I played in high school, we watched film. When I played in college, we watched a lot more film. And practices were filmed, which was new for me. So before every practice in college, we'd sit down in the film room by position and we'd watch the previous practice. And being watched and being on film all the time was challenging in a lot of ways. And you had a bad practice, you made a mistake, you didn't give your best effort. You'd walk into the film session and you knew everybody was going to watch it and it wasn't a good feeling and you get called out for it. But it taught me to give my best effort between the lines, run on and off the field, be where you're supposed to be to the best of your ability, just run and play hard, play fast. Right. And when I stopped playing football, I realized I missed that. I missed the accountability that came with being on film. And I tried to re-navigate and restructure my life so I could live as if my life were on film, right? Like, what if somebody were watching this film back? Would I be proud of my body language, of how I carried myself, of how that conversation went? And it's something I keep in the back of my mind. So I don't know if you have thoughts on either of those things, but I think about those often.
Yeah, no, I love, the first quote you said where the ball is always going to get snapped because that's just the truth of it. You're going to get banged up on the next play. You got to get up and got to get ready to go no matter what. It's just how it is. And that's honestly, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, that life is, it's every race I've gone into race day, toe the starting line. I've never been at 100%, herniated disc, whatever it was. Like we could obviously get into that later with all the races and stuff. I've never been 100%, but I've always been okay with that because every game I played, I was never at 100%, but I gave the 100% of what I had left in me. If overall I was at 80%, I gave 100 of that 80%, no matter what it was. Um, and then getting into the college part of it, the film, when you're like, oh, this is the play before when I messed up, and that feeling of like seeing it about to happen, and you're just like, and yeah, my coach was really big on that. And one thing I really love about it was not only the film part of like acting like everything is, all this is being filmed and everybody's gonna be watching and critiquing you and stuff like that. He was really big on the doing the little things right. So if, as a receiver, you have a 10-yard route and he would zoom in. If you break at 9 yards, that's up downs for everybody. And he would add them up, add them up. You broke too early, you broke too late, you broke too soon. You didn't show your face on this. getting a little technical, but so just emphasizing the little things, doing it right. 10 yards means 10 yards. And then that just kind of carried into the race atmosphere and just even the training runs. Like if I have 6 miles, I'm not stopping at 5.8, 5.9, 5.99. If I'm doing an 800-meter repeat, I'm not slowing down until I cross that line. And and you see the gap when you do work out with some people that they do walk across the line, and you see there's that gap there of people who, when they say, okay, 100-meter sprint, some people stopping at 90, 80, and then others who are going past that. And you could just kind of tell a little bit like, okay, they kind of had some type of sports impact on them, which, and again, it's the repercussions that come from it. It's like what you were saying, just being on film. And I forget who said it. They said you want to act like as if there was a film crew following you around with everything you do. Your life is a movie. Um, and everybody's going to be watching it. So you want to be at your best ability at all times. The interactions you have with a waiter, a hostess, the janitor, whoever it is, everybody's going to see that, and it's just propels you to be a better person. With that type of mindset. I forget who said it, but it's similar to what you were saying with you're being filmed, and you know that bad play is coming up, and all the good plays when you made that diving catch, you couldn't wait for it. And then there's some plays where you don't realize where, oh, I didn't realize I was a yard short on that route. Then boom, comes out of nowhere. So it's that concept is just, you can literally apply it to everything that goes on in life. So I'm a big fan of both of those right there for sure.
Yeah. And I think just on that second point of, finishing the rep, running through the line, not cutting corners
Mm.
in a sports setting where you have coaches and teammates and people are watching you, it's one thing to be accountable to that. But when you're on the track and it's dark out and you're the only one there, or, it's early morning, late night, whatever it is, you're on the treadmill and nobody else is around, it would be really easy to cut a corner and to run the 5.99 instead of the 6, or not run through the line, not finish the rep. Right. And that's what separates the best from everyone else. And, I think that's a habit that we get to build over time. And I'm really grateful in my life, and it sounds like in your life, that sport allowed us to ingrain those good habits. Now, with that being said, I'll say the weird thing. I'm not an aggressive person. Like I'm a very like calm, empathetic, I think level-headed person. But man, I miss putting on pads and just like running into people. Like, do
Oh
you
yeah.
miss that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And again, like me, like I was literally just talking to my crew this morning for this race coming up. Like, there's gonna come a time in the race. You're gonna, some people, they get a little too angry, get a little too into it. That's not me. I'm very level headed. When I was on the field, I just flow. I don't try to do too much. I don't try to play outside of the same environment that I practice in, because then that's how mistakes are going to happen. So exactly how I'm practicing in practice, how I'm playing in practice, I'm playing in that game speed same way. So practicing at that 100%, going for these runs, if I'm doing a track workout, hitting the numbers I have to hit, doing that at 100%, and then taking it into race day where I'm over here just filming everything, chatting with people. But I do miss, honestly, miss getting hit a little bit. The one thing I will say I do miss is waking up the next day with just body is sore, banged up, bruises. That's one thing I miss, just getting out of bed and then going to that film session the next day. Everybody's like limping in there and knowing we're about to play another game in 5 days, and we're all limping into the film room for the next day. But it's like we just keep doing it on repeat, and we find ways to get it done, and it goes back to that never being at 100%. But yeah, I do. I do miss strapping the pads up and kind of getting after. And again, I'm an undersized guy. I was never a big rah rah type of person on the field. I was a captain, so I did have to assert authority when I needed to and step in when I needed to. But yeah, I just love being out there, and then the play just kind of spoke for itself. I mean, it doesn't help being a smaller guy in the field. You automatically have a target on your head because everybody's like, "Oh, that's a highlight tape waiting to happen." So I did experience a little bit of that. But I love it. I loved all of it. I loved the hits. I love the big plays. I love just every bit of it. And then, yeah, I do miss it though, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we could talk about this
Yeah.
forever. For the sake of people
Yeah.
listening who never played football, hopefully they got something out of that conversation. I think there are takeaways that apply to everyone. But with that being said, we'll zoom back out and I'll ask you the first big question of the podcast, which is, when you look at your life to this point, Matt, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
Yeah. So I could take this two ways. One would be physically, and another would be mentally. So there was, and it sounds, I'll I'll take both, but I'll make them, I'm not going to
Yeah.
go on a tangent here. The first one kind of stems from football. I went into college anticipating playing 5 years, redshirting my freshman year, going for my master's. And that was the plan. There's nothing else but that. And then after my sophomore season, everybody was bringing it up to my attention that I would be repeating things time and time again and not having any recollection of it. I would be saying the same things over and over again. I would have no recollection of even doing these things my friends said we did. And they're like, Matt, like, remember that? And I'm like, no, I even there? So all that kind of opened my eyes. And my ex-girlfriend had a big part in this too, in terms of kind of opening my eyes to it. Because a lot of that I repeated this stuff to her. And it led me to a decision I didn't want to do, but I knew I had to do, which was called the only guy or the only coach that took a chance on me, the only offer that was, given to me and out of any college, and tell him I couldn't play anymore. I couldn't do it just because there was a fog around me. My emotions were out of whack. I didn't feel like an actual like human being at the time. It was a very bad place I was in, and it was the hardest but the most pivotal decision I've ever made in my life thus far. And that was a decision where yes, it was in my control, but in a way, everything was pointing to just I had to do that. I had to do it for the betterment of myself. And then fast forward to now, a completely different person in terms of how I feel up here. Um, and then, so one of the hardest things physically, I guess, I've been that I didn't really choose to go through. But I've been blessed with minimal injuries, minimal, just, I've healthy family, friends. Don't get me wrong, I've had a few significant losses along the way, as everybody has, some teammates and stuff. One thing recently that was kind of pretty hard that I didn't have any choice on or really have any handle on was, I want to say it's about 2 years ago. I signed up for my first marathon, and then 2 days after, I ended up in the hospital with just a random kidney disease. And it was the first kind of thing that hit me like that. Being a healthy person, I was a healthy guy. This was probably about 3 years ago. I was a healthy guy. I just signed up for my first marathon. I was so excited, and then I noticed I was like my legs were tight. I was gaining weight. I stepped on the scale, and I was 13 pounds heavier than what I was at usually. And I made my whole family tell me their weight and then step on to see if I was, my thing was out of whack. Um, and then, yeah, it was like 15 pounds overweight. And I looked at my mom, I was like, we probably should go to the hospital right now. And then, I was in the hospital for 2 days. Doctors had no clue what was going on for a while. I was tested for diabetes, for everything, hooked up to a million different things, blood work every 5 hours. Yeah, fast forward like a few weeks later, it was just, well, I mean, in the hospital, it obviously is tough. And then obviously with your parents being there, it's, they're stressing because it's their kid that's on a hospital bed right now. But with me, I was really more so just, whatever it is, we're going to figure it out. Obviously like my mom was upset, everybody was upset, but like I was really at peace in a way knowing that an answer was going to come from this. And then ended up just being a form of nephrotic syndrome called minimal change disease. And then that was something that just kind of had an impact for the rest of that year leading into the next year as well. I had to be put on heavy steroids for about 3 months, and that jacks your whole body up. It weakens the ligaments and everything, and it makes you moody. Although I didn't really feel like I was moody. I felt pretty, because again, I'm like level headed. I don't let the situation get to me. And then, yeah, that was something that was out of my control that kind of opened my eyes. Like, your life is extremely precious. And no matter how healthy you are, it could be taken away from you in a second. And as I was sitting in that hospital bed, you can't help but think about possibly like, okay, is this it? Like, is something else going to spiral into this? It's like, you got to be realistic with yourself in a way. And it really opens your eyes a little bit. It's unfortunate. It takes things like that sometimes to open our eyes. But grateful for all of it. And it ended up leading to an even better story with my marathon and doing what I set out to do, given I had a very short time to train because I didn't move the date at all. I would say those are two things that was out of my control, really, but two very impactful points in my life that were very pivotal, I guess, and then influential on me and my decisions moving forward.
So if we were to take both of those things and say maybe a common thread is that you lost something or you were threatened with the loss of something. And in both scenarios, right, your health was at risk, but with football, you lost the sport of football, right? That was your sophomore year was your last season of football, and you chose to give that up for your health. And then, being in the hospital and just being faced with those thoughts of like, okay, my health is really important and I don't want to lose any more of it. Loss is hard. And I think sometimes loss helps us reinvent ourselves. It helps give us a deeper perspective on life. And I'll bring this to something that I've experienced and something that I think about from time to time in conversations like this, bring it up. I mentioned this on the podcast before, but back in it was either 2015 or 2016, I was in a car accident and it was a normal day driving down a normal road that I drive down every day, going to the gym. And a car ran a stop sign. We kind of hit the front ends of our car. My car was higher, so it flipped and rolled and totally totaled. And I remember being in the car, gripping the steering wheel as it was rolling, just thinking, I'm never going to see the people I love ever again. And I was so sad and I felt the pit in my stomach. And, I got out of the car and I stood on the sidewalk and I looked back on the car, just wrecked, and I was fine. And, that was the best day ever. I never felt so good in my entire life. I felt like Superman standing on that sidewalk. And I thought I would feel that way forever, like, oh, like nothing can get to me. Life is precious. There's nothing to worry about. Like the small things don't matter. But the truth is, like, it kind of fades over time. And when I talk about it and think about it, I feel that again, right? I feel that gratitude, like, oh man, like, this thing happened with work, or I'm frustrated about this small injury, or that thing didn't go the way I had planned. Not a big deal, but it's easy to get wrapped up in those things and forget the big picture of what's really important. Do you find that at all, the further removed you are from those situations, that it's hard to be grateful for your health and for the simple things?
Yeah, yeah. I think obviously the closer you are to that situation in terms of timeline, the more impactful it's going to be. And then as time goes on, you kind of settle back into everything, and then you fade away from what actually got you to where then you are down the road in a way. And then it's good to always just kind of come back to it and think about it, to then reground yourself in a way. Um, but yeah, I could agree with that. It's an interesting concept because everybody's experiences are different with their situations that got them to where they are. Everybody has, I feel like, a pivotal time in their life where it's changed the trajectory somehow, or just something up here in terms of how you view life in general, or anything like that. And so I feel like it's very individualized to the person and what they experienced. And then depending on how long that actually sticks with them and that feeling that you were talking about. But yeah, I do try to think back to it sometimes, and when I find myself getting too kind of just getting too up high, and like, just to bring me back down a little bit, like this, life is precious. It's I could wake up tomorrow and have that same kidney disease and I gotta go back in the hospital, so um just kind of regrounding myself is one way I've been going about it for sure.
Yeah. And so two things here. One is, that was the last season you played football. We experience a lot of lasts all the time. And we don't think about that, right? This might be the last time we ever have a recorded conversation, the first and the last, who knows? You can go to the gym tomorrow and for whatever reason, that could be the last day you ever get to work out. You can spend time with a loved one next week and that might be the last time you ever get to see them. And we don't think about that, right? We're experiencing lasts all the time. And when you put it that way, or at least when I frame it that way for myself, it's a lot easier to be present and grateful, knowing that I won't ever get to live this moment ever again. Even if I get to see that person or do that thing again, it'll never be the same as it is in this unique moment. And so, for anybody listening, I would challenge you to think about life that way for the rest of this day, the rest of this week, and just see how it feels. And then the other thing is, I was hoping for a good segue to ask you about some of your tattoos, but I think we all have our own way of reminding ourselves of certain things, and so I'd be curious to hear. Right, are there tattoos that you have that are meant to remind you of things that are really important in your life?
Yeah. So most of them are on my arm here. So this is one of the first ones I got, which is just the staple of God is greater than the highs and the lows. A handful of them are more religious. I'm a religious individual. I credit everything I do to the big man. I mean, I can't even. It's so I think this last year, a lot of it has been my faith has grown exponentially, and I've felt just a change inside of me. It's hard to even explain. Um, One of I mean, getting into, like, I guess, the symbolic ones, this was my ironman, the one I did in Arizona. So it's in a desert with the Ironman logo on the back. So it's just that. But the writing here is one thing I love is spirit lead me where my trust is without borders. That is just something that's always in my head. Um, just to when I am unsure of my decision, just to fall back and trust that whatever decision I make is the right decision, even if it may not end well. I was meant to be there at that bad ending to then get me to somewhere else. And then one other symbolic one is just on my quad, and it's just a rose with the stem of it saying love. And a big reason for that is like what you were saying, kind of approach it, everything like it's the last. And let's say you hug a person hello, and you hug a person goodbye for the last time. Those two hugs are going to be very different. You're going to hold on a little bit longer. There's going to be more love involved, more affection involved. Even if it's me hugging my brother or whoever, or just a close friend. There's always a little bit more when you do have that framework of this may be the last time, and so leading with love just out of your heart, it just puts so much more good into the world. And that's something that I think is lacking a lot. And it's just a constant reminder there to just stick to my roots. And no matter what happens, whether I wake up one day and I won $1 million, or I'm one of the most famous person on earth, like that is not changing. And it's just having that as my backbone. Um, to lead with that, lead with love, lead with kindness, because it is contagious and it does make the world a better place, even if it's just affecting one person at a time. So yeah, I do like the idea of the last idea, because it is true, because you do never know. And it's when you just even remind yourself of it every once in a while, you're like, okay, I should approach the situation like that. You may not remember it all the time. We're not perfect. We're gonna forget, like, oh wait, I didn't do that, or I didn't do this. But as long as you're trying it and trying to keep it present, the attempt is all that matters, because then the body will naturally try to start do it more, depending on the response from it. So if it's a good response from it, and you had a great conversation with this person because you approached it like it was your last time seeing them, you're gonna want to do that again. So it's just giving it a chance, and then seeing how that grows from there.
Yeah, my mind, well, one, I love that. And my mind goes to a place of maybe it's possible to approach everything like it's your first and your last, and approaching it from the lens of it's your first through curiosity, right? Like to just be in awe, right? Like the first time, especially kids, you see they experience something for the first time. There's this sense of awe and wonder and oh wow, that's incredible. And so, yes, that and exactly what you said, this could be the last. So let me hold on a little bit longer and let me appreciate this just a little bit extra. Would be a powerful approach that I'm personally going to, try to integrate a little bit more after this conversation. And I would love to go back to the tattoo on your arm. Spirit lead me where my trust is without borders. So that's from, if I'm not mistaken, the song Oceans, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Great song.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit more about what that means to you, because I think there's something special about the idea of faith. Even if you're not a person of faith listening to this, you don't identify as, religious or even spiritual. I think faith is something we can all benefit from, because the truth is we don't have all the answers, right? There's so much uncertainty. Every single day we wake up, we're living a brand new day we've never lived before. And we have to have a certain level of faith that, that car driving the opposite direction, that the driver's not going to hit me, right? That if I do these things, it will end in a positive result. So tell me about that quote for you. Let's go a little bit deeper there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and just to segue off of you, I'm not, everything I'm saying is not me saying, oh, you got to be a Christian, this or that. I am open about it. I am open about it for the reason that that's, why we're here, just to share our gifts with others. Cause there's something that you're significantly better than me. I'm more gifted at that I am not. And, when we share those things, we collectively just bring everybody in the, in the forward direction. And, at the end of the day, you think about why you were put here. Nobody was put here to be selfish, to kind of live in a little bubble, to not do these things, because then everybody around you won't be bettering themselves in a way. Everybody rides off each other. And that's what comes back to the love tattoo. That's just the fuel for it in a way. But yeah, spirit lead me where my trust is without borders. The first time I heard that song, and this is a new thing in my life, I want to say a little over a year, where I recently went from Catholic to Christian. And a cool story on that. It's just a good thing of everything happens for a reason. I like sharing this because there's no explanation but, God working in this. And it was, I was recommended this one church in New Jersey, and it was a Christian church. And I was like, oh, but I've been going to Catholic church my whole life. But I felt like I needed something different. I wasn't getting what I wanted out of it. I would sometimes fall asleep in it. It wasn't like I just wasn't taking anything from it. And I knew it was the right thing to do to be there, but I wasn't getting what I wanted. And so I watched the live stream of this one church for 2 weeks. The church is called Emergence in Totowa. And I watched the live stream for 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I got to just go. And while I'm there, 15 minutes into it, and first off, it was just greeted with people that just were so happy just to like be there. And that was right away just something I love seeing. Um, they were going over Genesis, and this was 15 minutes into, just kind of it was right at the beginning of Lent. So you're starting at the creation point and everything. And he pulls this random quote from Matthew, and it's for where your treasure is, that's where your heart will also be. And it's the exact quote that is tattooed on my ribs here on my side. And when you have something like that happen, there was immediately you just feel like the top of a roller coaster, something just sink down. And it's like, if there's ever been a clear sign, it's that one there, that I am in the right spot. I could have went the week prior instead of watching the live stream. I could have went the week before that instead of watching the live stream, but I chose to go on that day. I could have went an hour earlier at 8 o'clock instead of going at 9. I could have went an hour later at 12 o'clock. Everything there's no other explanation, but I was supposed to be there right at that time. And that was confirmation of that. And that opened my eyes. And since then, I ended up getting baptized in that church in last September. And I've been going, if I'm around, every Sunday. It's just been something I look forward to every week, just I go by myself because I do like using that time to kind of isolate myself a little bit. If my friends want to come, I'm never going to say no, obviously. But it's a time for me where I used to just ground myself and just no phone, no nothing. It's the one place where I could just focus on where I'm at, which is something I've been working on. And then, yeah, getting into the songs and everything. And once I heard Spirit Lead Me Where My Trust Is with that board, is just how beautiful the song is. I listened to that song so many times in a row, and I'm like, wow, it could just go so much deeper than just the words. You could take that into every situation of like you approaching something like, I don't know what to do here, but I'm scared, but I know whatever I do choose to do, this is my trust. And within this last year, I've just had this huge trust fall back on that he is going to guide me into whatever I need to do. Especially off this last year, and again, I'm open to talk about everything. It was easily the lowest point of my life, mentally, physically, everything. But again, I walk around with a smile on my face because it's, I don't want to be projecting obviously any negativity onto the world or anything like that. But and time again, when you just keep getting kicked down after you feel yourself going up a little bit, then boom, you bump down more. And it's like, when you try to stop forcing that, you then fall back to trusting it that I won't be going through this if there wasn't that light at the end of the tunnel. Something else is going to happen in order to get me there. And although it is so hard to see it, it was so hard to see it at that time. I'm grateful that I stuck it out and really flipped that framework, that mindset to then. And again, I credit everything to this quote, and that just even some of the songs that I listened to as well. And then fast forward to now, I'm in a much better place than where I was about a year ago. And it's like, I didn't see the light at all, not even the smallest bit of light. Even if I did, then boom, it got cut right away from me. And it's just falling back and having that trust at your lowest point is sometimes where it happens. And that's what happened for me. And I'm very grateful. That's what I said, going back to it, kind of just bringing it all together. But that's really how my faith has grown, just exponentially, and taking it into everything I do. That's why I'm very open to talking about it, because it's saved me and got me to this point now. So it's I can't help but not credit it. And if you don't believe in God or Jesus Christ or anything like that, there's something has put you here, whatever that is that you believe in, and just have faith in that. Just trust that you were put here for whatever reason it is, and you're going through whatever you're going through because there's that silver lining at the end of it. So just holding on a little bit longer, one more day at a time. I think the saying goes, you don't break an addiction in one day. It's you break the addiction for that day, then you have to do it again the next day, then the next day, then the next day. And so you're going through a bad time. Yes. Okay. We're going to get through that today. We'll worry about tomorrow when we get there. Okay. We'll go through it again tomorrow. We'll worry about that. We'll worry about that next day. And it's just really just breaking it down into bite-sized bits, and not taking the pressure off your shoulders a little bit, and just trusting that you're supposed to be going through what you're going through right now, which again is super hard, super, super hard. I can't emphasize that enough. It's so much easier said than done. But yeah, so that's kind of went on a tangent there, but I could talk about that all day. just with my faith and everything. Cause that's everything I credit to get that got me to where I'm at right now.
Yeah. You and I have so much in common. Not only the fact that we're New Jersey natives. I grew up in New Jersey, despite living in Philadelphia. That'll always
Mm,
be my home. And but our stories are similar in a lot of ways. And I'll go a bit into something I don't think I've talked a whole lot about on the podcast. It's hard to remember, this many episodes in. I feel like I repeat myself every conversation, but so the one thing is, tattoo on my wrist is of a plant, a sprout coming up through the ground, and it represents a quote that I love from Christine Kane, who said, "Sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted." And right, that's the trust, right? It's like, I can't see any light right now. And it feels like I've been buried, but I'm going to choose to adopt the perspective that I've been planted because I know this is happening for a reason. And you have to hang in there long enough to see that happen, right? Like that's also part of it. And so that's one thing. The other thing I'll say is like, I grew up Catholic. When I met my now wife, that was the first time I got introduced to a non-denominational Christian church. And it totally changed things for me. It was an experience like I'd never had before. And it allowed me to get a lot closer to God than I think I ever had before. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because I had a similar experience where my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, was taking me to church, and then she went to California for 6 weeks for a clinical rotation for school. And I felt really, really low. I had already been in a tough season of life. And, being separated by distance from her made me feel even worse. And so I decided to go to a new church I'd never been to before. And I was just going to leave my phone in the car. And she was flying to California. And so I told myself, I would really love to hear from her. I'm not even sure if she's going to text me. We actually weren't even dating at the time. And I said, I'll just put my phone in the car and I'm just going to go. I'm going to be present. I had a really emotional experience at church in a good way. And I get to my car, unlock the car, open it up, pull up the center console where my phone was in there. And as I unlocked my phone, like the second I swiped up on my screen, a text message came through from her. And I get the chills thinking about it now because
mm,
it was just such a sign to me that I was in the right place. I was doing the right thing. I was looking for the right things. And through that, I've grown a lot. That was 7 years ago at this point. And music has been a big way that I've gotten connected deeper in my faith. And I feel like for anybody who's out there listening, and then we can move on to a new topic, but if it's something that you want to explore and you don't know how, one, I think asking questions and listening to conversations where people are talking about their stories like this is important. But listen to some music. There's some amazing music out there that, in its own way, is prayer. Right? It teaches you about faith, and it helps me lean into that a little bit more. So I'll be in the gym some mornings, just rocking out to worship music, lifting heavy weights, and it's just it's beautiful. So I appreciate you sharing your story, Matt.
mm. Yeah, no, of
Yeah.
course. And again, like I even got chills you about it's like just divine timing, man. You can't make it up. You can't, because again, you could have went to maybe an earlier session. You could have went to a later one. It's like, you can't make up the timing. And that's the point I'm just trying to emphasize with this stuff. It's so incredible. If you're open to it, when you do open your mind to it, that's where you do realize, wait a minute, that is crazy that happened, that this happened. Like, wait, the timing of that is insane. It's like, it's supposed to be happening, when you open up a little bit more to it. But yeah, all good stuff though. I love that.
Yeah. So with that being said, that conversation stemmed from the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle, which was two things. What's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose, and why did you do that thing?
So I'm going to take this into physically, because it does get into more so of there's a lot of external impact that was trying to stop me from doing it. Last November, I did my first Ironman with only 6 weeks of training. Um, I was supposed to do one earlier in the year in May, and then 2 months into training, I tore a ligament in my ankle. Um, and this was kind of coming off of, because I was just coming off the prednisone like a few months before that. So again, body is still not fully up to where it's got to be. I rolled my ankle a million times in football, a million times just anywhere, and I rolled my ankle coaching a class, and ligament completely snaps. And then I continued coaching two more classes after that, because why would I not? And then so I had to push off the race to November, and I had my second marathon in September. where I wanted to go sub 3, and we did 2:55, which was amazing. And again, coming into that prep kind of with 0 miles, I had no base built up. So we were doing 12 weeks, going from 0 miles to trying to run sub 3. And then from there, I'm like, damn, I got to run a full Ironman. I got to compete. I got to do a full Ironman in 6 weeks. At that time, my hamstring was all jacked up. So I ran twice a week, I think, for those 6 weeks. I had no coach, minimal prior knowledge. I was always a good swimmer until I got in a pool and actually had to do a workout. And that was uh, that was the most dialed in my preps I've ever been. Um, I can kind of credit. I did go through a breakup a little bit before that, so I think that might have had some reason to it. And if she listens to, we're on very good terms too, so I could talk about this. But if she's listening to this, it's just accrediting to her for this. And again, we're very cordial, very mature about it. We're on very good terms. But yeah, and that was the most dialed in I've ever been in my entire life. And throughout that whole prep, waking up at 4 a.m., not barely going out at all, not hanging out with my friends, saying no to everything, going to bed at 8 o'clock every night, sitting on my bike in my room, right behind me, actually, right over here for 4 hours, staring at a wall. I never rode my bike on the road until race day. I never swam outside of a pool until race day. And I ran twice a week leading up to it. So I approached that race, and one of the guys that we were about to get started, one of the guys said, "Oh, how was training going?" And I told him that, and he looks at me, he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but we're gonna find out." And throughout that whole prep, everybody's telling me, "Matt, like you got to push it off. Like people train years for this thing. People don't even do full Ironmans because of how crazy it is. People will only do halves." And I'm like, I'm not people though, and I want to find out myself. And I set out to do right around 12 hours 45 minutes, and I did it in 11 hours and 42 minutes. I ran a 3:42 marathon at the end of it. And for those that don't, Ironman, there's no music, no phone, no nothing. So it's just you and your thoughts. And after that race has propelled me to do just the mindset that I gained after that race, proving to myself that the body is physically capable of doing these crazy things with minimal preparation. Um, it has changed everything that goes on up here to now where I'm looking at what I thought would be crazy initially. I know that's attainable now, and I will never set out for something that I'm 100% certain that I could do. I want to set out for something where when I sign up for that race and I set that goal out there, I have no clue how I'm going to get it done. But I'm going to find a way to get it done. It's just shooting for that big audacious goal, that scary goal, because you learn so much more, you grow so much more along the way, and you achieve so many more smaller goals along the way as well. I could have very easily done a half Ironman, and shot for it, went a little bit faster, but there was so much just excitement knowing I have no clue if I could do this. I didn't even have a set fueling strategy. I literally bought candy the night before because I heard somebody talking about it. They use it on their race. I had it on mile 90 on my bike. I bought a bike off Facebook Marketplace for $1,000. As I'm riding on that bike, I see $10,000 bikes just broken down on the side of the road. And I'm just talking to God the entire time. Just get me a little bit further, get me off this bike. Just no pop tires, no nothing. And, you know, odds were not in my favor at all. And that was physically the hardest thing I've ever done. I will say the running is where it started. And, when you have no music, no nothing, I had my mom and dad there, which I saw a bunch of times when I was running, which helped out a lot. But I started going on the run, and the way I stayed kept occupied. And the reason why I'm saying this is because in case anybody else decides to do an Ironman, and also a different perspective shift in these hard times is I told myself I'm not walking this entire time. When every single step, my body was telling me you need to stop right now. I had no feeling in my feet for 5 miles. My quad, it literally felt like somebody had brass knuckles on, just beating down my legs. My back was shot, and my fueling wasn't going well. I couldn't stomach any gels, couldn't stomach my carb and electrolytes. So I was having chips and water at every aid station, but I never stopped running. I told myself once I hit the wall, I'm not going to stop running, and I'm not letting anybody pass me. I counted 651 people on my hand that race, that marathon, that I would look at in front of me. Okay, they're next on the list. I'm going, boom, next person. And it just kept me so occupied that I was able to stick to a strong pace and finish this race as strong as I could. And again, it's the lesson I learned from it that people can take from this is your body best. Although you may not know it, give the body a chance to show what it can do. Because not only the body is physically capable, but the part that holds it back from actually showing is the mind. The mind will suppress it sometimes. But the body can really do these crazy things if you do give it a shot and push past that point where you're like, okay, I should stop. Everybody has that point in a race where they could either slow down or stop running. It's that 1 second decision that David Goggins talks about. Everybody says, okay, my leg is hurting. I'm just going to stop. You're not special. Everybody has that decision. Everybody has that question that pops up. But then your answer to that says a lot about you. And every step of the way, I'm like, no, I'm not stopping. No. And I see other people stop ahead of me. And I'm like, okay, this is more fuel for me. Like, I'm going. I had nothing against them. Trust me. Everybody I passed, I'd say, good job, keep it up. But in my head, it was a mental war zone up there of just, I'm not stopping. I'm feeding off of all this. So that was the most pivotal point physically in my racing career that I've done. And I'm very happy that I went against what everybody was telling me to do. Because again, you just gave your body a chance, and now it has elevated my mindset that much more coming out of it.
So, episode 96 of this podcast was with Matt Johnson, and it was right after a string of some crazy races he completed. Yeah. And his fuel was in part after a relationship didn't end up working out. And so where I want to go with this is what goes on inside your mind beyond what you already shared during a hard experience like that. Are there demons you're battling? Are there dark places you're tapping into? What are you choosing to go to? First of all, I love that strategy of picking people off and counting, like that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. But where else did your mind go? And I think it would be interesting because a lot of people listening to this are pursuing things that require them to push through the wall.
Yeah. So are you saying in terms of training prep, or are you saying just in the race day in general, of just kind of just when things get hard and like different ways to?
Yeah, let's say when things get hard, where do you take your mind?
Yeah, so a lot of that is preparing for that moment. There's no moment in your training block. If you have a 12-week training block, every day you run, bike, swim, or whatever you're training for is never going to be like that race day. So you can only know so much, but you have to mentally prepare yourself that there's going to come a point in time where I'm going to want to stop. My body's going to be in the most pain I've ever experienced in my entire life, which it was. And one thing I like to do, and some people take this the wrong way in terms of like, I guess a negative way of how I think about it. One thing I do every single race, almost every situation I'm going into, is I prepare for the worst. So what did I do coming into the Ironman? I told myself, okay, on the swim, so I'm taking you exactly through what I was telling myself. Because again, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to swim in the time I needed to. I told myself, okay, what if like I didn't zip up my wetsuit all the way and water's getting in and it's weighing me down? What could I do? Thinking about answers about that. Thinking about worst case scenario. Okay, 5 minutes into the swim, I get a cramp. Do I know how to backstroke? Do I know how to just float? What am I going to do there? Getting onto the bike. Okay, I didn't pack my honey stingers. What am I going to do there? Are there aid stations that I could stop at that I could grab some stuff? Um, pop a tire. That's the one thing I didn't prepare for, though. I was really just leaving it all up to him up there, saying, just please, just get me through this. I don't have a spare tire with me. I need to get this done. Just get me off this bike, and I will finish this race as strong as I can. Um, and then the way I prepared myself for the run was, what if my stomach isn't just going to take anything? And I have all these I had a whole sheet breaking down every carb, protein, fat, electrolytes that I was putting into my body every so often, every 30 minutes. And I spent 2 hours, 3 hours doing that, practicing it every Saturday. And that went completely out the window at mile 13. And I prepared myself for that, though, because that was the one part where it did happen, where I went into that thinking, okay, what if I'm just not able to stomach anything? What am I going to survive on? So I checked at the aid stations. What do they have there? What could I then swap out for food if maybe I need a little taste of something else? And it was my stomach. I remember out of pure anger, I had my handheld water bottle and I threw it out. It was already half full. I didn't drink it. I was like, it just wasn't going down. I almost threw up every time I drank it. And then I was like, all right, let me just ride it out a little bit more. I got my other one. I took a sip, almost threw up again. I literally threw both of them out. And it's so funny because I guess weeks after that, when I got into another training prep, I'm like, in the morning, I'm like getting so mad I can't find my handhelds, and I'm like, where did they go? But because I was so out of it, and then that was it though. So I made sure I really knew I was at those aid stations, and just in case, worst case scenario, and you prepared for it. And again, it's just a lot of that stems from football. Getting into it, like I prepared for because as a receiver, let's say I was at the slot position, there's somebody to my left and then there's two other receivers on the other side of the field, depending on what formation you're in. We're not going to get too technical, but I prepared for whatever guy was on my side. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. And I had to tell him, and I had to direct him or this or that. So it's coming into it over prepared really is the gist of this all.
Mm.
And just ready for what could possibly go wrong. Now it's not a negative mindset, but it's just being over prepared so that you can take it and just kind of like, okay, we're good. I thought about this happening. And again, you can only prepare so much, it's, you're not gonna be prepared for everything, but a lot of it is slowing it down up here and not letting the moment get to I guess how quick you're making decisions. Now, again, if time is not in your favor, you obviously have to make it fast, but slow it all down up here. Slow everything down up here. Process everything. Okay, go through that checklist. Okay, boom, boom, boom. All right, I'm going to do this. Right. And slowing everything down up here is one thing that, again, stems from football. Just even as I'm coming out of the huddle, what defense are they in? What play are we running? Who am I blocking? If I'm not blocking, what's my route? What's his route? And you're doing all that in 5 seconds and you're going through this checklist. And all that has stemmed from that to where, for example, this race I got coming up Saturday, I have to prepare if my stomach just decides not to take any more food at mile 50 or mile 40. What am I going to do? What's my backup? What if it starts downpouring and it's going to be super muddy? I got to bring a few other pair of shoes, a few other pair of socks. I got to over prepare for this stuff. So that's kind of the gist of it all. And I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but I'm very big on that, and it really has helped a lot in terms of when things got hard. I didn't let the situation get to me ever, and I don't want to say ever, but because obviously it's different, but you're able to handle it a little bit better and a little bit in a mature and more thoughtful way.
Yeah. All of that is so good. And I'll just add on top of it that if you had to boil down the attitude of what you're talking about, I would call it the even if attitude
Hmm.
as opposed to the what if attitude. And a lot of people get caught up in the what ifs, right? They get paralyzed. Like, well, what if this goes wrong? Or, what if that happens? Or what if I can't do XYZ? And that stops a lot of people from even starting,
Hmm.
as opposed to the even if. It's like, okay, well, even if this happens, like, this is the backup. Even if that happens, I'm prepared. Even if I don't know what to do, like, I'll just keep going. And that even if attitude, I think, is really valuable because it allows you to do things. It allows you to explore. It allows you to go beyond limits that you've never been to before. And that's where growth exists. And so, part of this podcast, it's called the Project Endure podcast, is about endurance. And so when you hear the word endurance and you think about pushing past limits, what does endurance mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question because I feel like it's ever changing with my answer, or evolving, I guess would be the best way to say it as I'm getting deeper into it. Um, Being used to going fast my whole life for a short amount of time, it's what majority are able to do, just, like this if they need to. If somebody needs to go sprint 100 meters on the track, they could go do that right now. Endurance, what I realized is the ability to do the redundant work consistently, I guess would be the best way to say it. And as I'm getting deeper into my endurance career, that right there then stems to, okay, it's the work you do where you don't see the instant gratification, the instant results from it. It's the work you do, trusting that the work you are doing will then get you to that that goal you're shooting for. If it's 100 miles, if it's this, if that, any type of endurance thing, it's just the ability to do that redundant work consistently, the stuff that people don't want to do, the stuff that where it's not going to be like, okay, I just got significantly stronger 2 weeks later. It's like, no, you might get significantly stronger a year later, 2 years later. But a lot of it, the physical endurance itself, the gap I found, people could put in the same work, but the gap I found comes down to mentally. Endurance is a minefield. It's not a minefield, but it's a battlefield up in your headspace, and that's the truth of it. Everybody's bodies are capable of certain things, but everybody's mind is all what you curated it to be through doing hard things your entire life. So if you constantly um, just those stack those bricks of doing these hard things, running the Ironman, training for a marathon in 45 days and crushing it, and you stack it. You have that, what Mosey said, the undeniable proof of, like, doing what you said you were going to do. It's You then build the mental side of it, which then translates to that, the ability to do that redundant work over and over again, trusting that it'll get you to where you need to go. So I guess that would be the best way. And I've thought about that too. It's you could take the answer a handful of ways. That's kind of why I love it though, because I feel like it's always evolving. I might have a different answer next year. You know, it's what I've gained thus far and my experiences that I've gained, and everybody's answer is going to be different. I feel like, so that's why I feel like it's an interesting question for sure. And I know you would probably have a different answer as well. But that's kind of where I'm
Yeah.
at with the idea of what is endurance mean to me, or what is endurance in general.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it makes me think of a quote from Jacob Reese. It's titled The Stonecutter's Credo. And he said, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a single crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know it was not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before." And it's that idea of like, okay, it might feel like this redundant work is not getting me anywhere. It might feel like I'm banging my head against the wall,
Mm.
but can I trust, going back to the idea of faith and trust, that if I keep showing up, eventually that rock will split in half? And that is what separates a lot of the best from the rest.
Yeah, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that quote. That's if I could formulate what I just said into a quote, that would be it right there. I just couldn't find that. I'm not the memory again. It's I have a lot of quotes up here. Sometimes I just got to have it brought out. But that if I could explain it anyway, that would be the way to do it. It's because that's the
Yeah.
truth of it. I think that's the best way to explain it.
And I'll just say this too before we move to the final question. There are people listening to this, I know for a fact, who are thinking to themselves, dude, I can't even get out of bed in the morning. Like, what do you mean do hard things like run on the track or do this pursuit or whatever? If you're listening to this and you're feeling that way, hard is relative. So your hard is your hard. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be running. It doesn't have to be fitness. It could be getting up, making your bed, and going about your day with a smile on your face, right? That could be your hard today, and that's okay. I think it's whatever is hard in your life, showing up and doing that thing to the best of your ability over and over and over again is what matters most.
Mm.
And so, with that being said, the last question of the podcast, Matt, is really aimed toward people who are in a low, in a valley, going through something hard. And I know you've been there. I've been there, and sometimes it's really hard to pull yourself out of that. So if you got a chance to speak encouragement, give advice, or just talk to somebody who's in a really dark, tough place right now, what would you say?
Okay. So being fresh out of probably the lowest point of my life, one thing I will say is find people who will stand in the rain with you when they don't have to. Um, when they can just go inside and watch them outside when they're not forced to being out there. Find people who will stand in the rain with you when they don't have to. And it's hard to find that. It's hard to. I found it hard myself to find those people. And I'm really big on accountability. I take accountability for everything, even if it's not my fault. I will find a way to just be accountable because I know it then will, bring me into a better person down the road. But it's a lot of stress you put on your body. So on top of that quote there, just understanding and trusting. And again, it's just there's no formula to it just besides the trust part of it and however you think is the best way to go about it. But it all will stem back to trust some way, somehow. Trusting that where you are right now is not where it's not your end goal. This is not your end zone here. There is so much more to you to go. And I kind of boiled it down to when I was in a really bad spot, boiled it down to if I am still waking up every day, I'm not done here. There's more to do. There's more to grow. There's more to progress. And I got too caught up with I got to get out of this now. I got to get out of this now. But let it take its shape. Let it feel. My biggest piece of advice is feel everything when you are at your lowest point. It allows you to appreciate where you once were at in the past when you were up there, and it allows you to appreciate where you are right now, understanding truthfully to yourself, down to the bare bones of your body, that you've never been here before, and it sucks. But and don't I'm not going to say enjoy it, but just acknowledge the suck. Acknowledge it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to just hold it inside. If you feel like you need to cry, cry. If you feel like you need to just go for a walk, go for a walk. Like do whatever you have to do in order to feel everything at your lowest. For a long time with me, I tried to just push it away and again go around with a smile on my face and be good with it, be cool with it. And it just all gets heavy inside. And I'm an emotional guy. I won't be afraid to cry about anything. Um, I just feel like I feel like the more you cry, the more you enjoy life. I feel like you get to feel a little bit more of everything. And again, it's subjective. It's not like that's not like a the final formula. But I do feel when I allow myself to feel more and not suppress my emotions or anything like that, you allow to you allow yourself to accept where you're at and accept where you're going to be going to, knowing that this is not the final destination because I am waking up every day. So whoever you believe in is not done with you yet. And I feel like if you had to take it back to any point, it'd be that point there. Um, Instead of thinking too far ahead, like, okay, what do I have to do for this, that, this, and that? I got to get out of this. I can't be doing this. It's not what's supposed to happen. If it's not what's supposed to happen, it's not meant to happen. It's not, it's what you, so a lot of times when you plan these things and you have a certain 5-year plan or something like that, it's most of the time it's not going to go as planned. Cause the only person that knows your plan is, in my case is God. And, although my plan has not gone to plan at all, I never anticipated being where I'm at right now. I love where I'm at. I love where I'm at because I allowed myself to trust that whole process. So, and just accept where you are in a way, feel everything at the lowest, feel it, because then it allows you to feel everything at your highest. There's no good without the bad. But you won't be able to really feel the good if you don't really feel the bad, really feel the low points to really feel the high points. And that's the one thing that I learned going through that spot that I was at, which I don't wish on anybody. When you are in that rock bottom or what you thought was rock bottom and there's a lower point of that, it's a tough spot to be. So find those people that'll stand down in the rain with you when they don't have to. I think that's a big part of it too. You don't have to go through it alone. Even if it's just one friend, even if it's your dog, that you feel most proud, most like happy with them, like keep them there, so I guess that would be I guess my answer to that question there.
That was also beautiful. I have to ask that quote, find people who will stand in the rain with you when they don't have to. Is that something you created or did you find that somewhere? That's so amazing.
So believe it or not, I heard it, and I'm trying to think where, and I wish I could credit the person that I heard it from. I want to say I heard it literally a few days ago, and that's why it's so fresh in my head right now. But it's something that I couldn't formulate the idea, but it's exactly what I was looking for at that time. And when I heard that quote, it's just like exactly when I was at church and they recited the quote that was on my ribs, like that stuck with me forever, And that I heard that quote, and I'm like, that that is what I needed, and I couldn't really put into words of what I needed. That is exactly what I needed. I don't know exactly who, but I'm sure I could try to find it, or we could try to find it. But it wasn't me. I'm not going to take credit for that. But yeah, but again, if I'm able to then bring it and then it is able to affect somebody else in a positive way or stick with somebody else, then I will recite a million quotes if I need to. But yeah, it really did stick with me.
Yeah, it'll stick with me as well. So with that being said, Matt, if something in this conversation made somebody want to learn more about you or feel compelled to reach out to you or just say thank you for this episode, where's the best place for people to do that?
Yeah, so you can do that on Instagram. So Matt_Zelaya, Zelaya. And yes, there's a decent amount of followers on there. And I know sometimes if you DM people that have followers, you don't think they're going to answer. I see everything. I respond to everything. I make sure I do. You could DM me anything, comment on anything. I will respond to every comment. I'll never miss anything because I know that if I want to ask a question to somebody else that I possibly look up to, I would love to get an answer from them. So don't let that shy away from, reaching out or anything like that. And if there's any way I could help or assist or anything like that, then, that's what we're here for, to help each other. So I'm an open book.
Amazing. Well, Matt, this episode will come out a day or two after your race, your ultra that's coming up here this weekend. So good luck. I'm sure you don't need it because you've put in the work. But I can't wait to see how it goes. And thank you again for this conversation and just for sharing your light with the world. We need more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man. And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation, honestly. You can only expect so much going into a podcast in terms of where it's going to go. And I really did appreciate it. We definitely do have a lot in common. Yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of building this relationship as well. And just, I appreciate the kind words as well. And just time to do the thing.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Endure Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.